Hi, this is Zeke, and what you're seeing is from the PTE reading practice test, which is part of the free PDF practice test available on the official PTE website. So today I'll be working through a reorder paragraphs question view. The first step when you approach a reorder paragraphs question is to scan through and discover the topic. So let's take about 15 seconds to do that. So I gather here that the topic is banks in Scotland and banknotes or currency. The next task is to discover the topic sentence, which will be the sentence that introduces the subject. This sentence won't have words that refer back to something else or that make us unsure what they're talking about. So words like but, this, these, those. It won't start with a transition phrase like furthermore or on the other hand. And additionally, it won't have pronouns like he, she, they, that, it, that refer back to something not mentioned in that sentence. So my first strategy is usually to identify the words that will not be found in the topic sentence, and the sentence without those things is generally the topic sentence. So this first sentence is introduced with but. Our paragraph will not start with but, so we know this is not the topic sentence. The next one, when this bank was founded. This bank, what bank? This refers to something already mentioned, and since the topic sentence is the first sentence, this can't be the topic sentence. To face growth of trade, it was deemed necessary to remedy this lack of an adequate currency. This lack. That's referring to some lack that they've already told us about, so this can't be the first sentence. The first Scottish bank to do this. To do what? So this also can't be the first sentence. In most countries, it is only the government, through their central banks, who are permitted to issue currency. There's no word here that refers back to a previous sentence, and this sentence also seems to introduce the topic of banks and currencies. So I believe that this is sentence number 1, the topic sentence. With the software I'm using for the video, I'm writing down the number. However, on the real exam, you'll drag this over here, or click on it and then click this arrow to move it to the box. On the right side of the box, that way, where you can't see yet, there will be an up arrow and a down arrow. And those arrows will enable you to move your answers up and down within the answer box. Okay, so now I'm going to go through these sentences systematically to try to figure out what comes next. So in most banks, only the government can issue banknotes. That's what that sentence was about. But in Scotland, 3 banks are still allowed to issue banknotes. This might be the second sentence, because but shows contrast, and it would be a contrast if banks in Scotland could issue banknotes, while in most countries it was only the government. But let's check the other sentences. When this bank was founded, that's referring to one specific bank already mentioned, and it hasn't been mentioned yet, so that's not the second sentence. To face growth of trade, it was deemed necessary to remedy this lack of an adequate currency. A lack of an adequate currency hasn't been mentioned yet either, so that's not the second sentence. The first Scottish bank to do this was the Bank of Scotland. That could also be the second sentence, because this could refer to issue currency. But it makes more sense to mention that banks in Scotland can issue currency before mentioning which ones did it first. So I think that this one here is the second, and down here is the third. After that, when this bank was founded in 1695, that makes sense as the next one. The first Scottish bank is one specific bank, and this bank would refer to one specific bank already mentioned. So that should be sentence 4. Scot coinage was in short supply, and of uncertain value. To face growth of trade, it was deemed necessary to remedy this lack of an adequate currency. Okay, so lack is a synonym for short supply, and currency is a synonym for coinage. So this one comes next. The final step is to read them all together and make sure that they make sense. So in this case, in most countries, it is only the government, through their central banks, who are permitted to issue currency. But in Scotland, 3 banks are still allowed to issue banknotes. The first Scottish bank to do this was the Bank of Scotland. When this bank was founded in 1695, Scots coinage was in short supply and of uncertain value compared with English, Dutch, Flemish, or French coin. To face growth of trade, it was deemed necessary to remedy this lack of an adequate currency. Okay, that makes sense. So I think that we have the order correct. In fact, I have the answer key, so I know that we have the order correct. So hopefully this was helpful. Peace, everybody.